وسلم على رسوله الكريم أما بعد فأعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم اقرأ باسم ربك الذي خلق وقال تعالى إنما يخشى الله من عباده العلماء صدق الله العظيم. We begin by praising Almighty Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for all the favors He has bestowed upon us, and we send salutations upon our beloved Nabi Kareem sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Jazakallah to the Deen team for setting up this program. May Allah Ta'ala reward it and grant it many benefits. Today is not really a talk, although normally we're so used to giving talks, but would like to keep it today very informal. So I'll just give you basic introductory remarks and then we can have a discussion. Please feel free to discuss whatever you feel you want to discuss, whatever is in your mind, whether it be related to the topic or even beyond the topic. Please, something to do with whatever is in your mind with regard to university studies. Let me start off by saying we all know about the importance of knowledge in Islam. The first wahi that came down is something that we relate often. Iqra' bismi rabbika alladhi khalaq. And remember that this is a revelation that came after a great amount of time. In fact, historically, the greatest period of time between the prophets, the greatest length of time is between Isa alayhi salam and Nabi Kareem sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Allah in the Holy Quran has made mention of it as the Fatrat Wahi. So you find in the 6th surah of the Holy Quran, Allah has made mention about it, about Fatrat, the suspension of Wahi. So the first Wahi that comes after 650 odd years is Iqra, read in the name of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Now the word Iqra bi ismi rabbik, read in the name of Allah, is very revealing, as I will go on to mention. But of course, there was an indication with regard to ilm and knowledge. And because of this, there was an unprecedented enthusiasm for knowledge across the board. Whether it be knowledge about deen, whether it be knowledge about what today we call tertiary education, contemporary knowledge, sometimes secular. And I will give you the reason why I don't like the word secular, but that is something that we can talk about. And because of that, there was this unprecedented enthusiasm for knowledge. Then we also have the hadith of Nabi Kareem sallallahu alaihi wasallam, talabul ilmi faridatun ala kulli muslim. The acquiring of knowledge is a compulsion upon each and every Muslim. And I normally add on to this by saying that if anyone tells you an ignorant Muslim, it's a misnomer, it's not supposed to exist. If knowledge is compulsory, then you are not supposed to have an ignorant Muslim. An ignorant Muslim is not supposed to exist because there is no such accommodation when knowledge is compulsory. Now, of course, the question does come, what is the compulsory knowledge that Allah and Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam in this hadith has related? Is it compulsory to become an alim? No, it's not compulsory to become an alim. Allah in the Quran says, فَلَوْلَا نَفَرَ مِنْ كُلِّ فِرْقَةٍ مِّنْهُمْ طَائِفَةٌ لِيَتَفَقَّهُوا فِي الدِّينِ. That in every community there must be some people who gain in-depth knowledge of the deen. لِيَتَفَقَّهُوا فِي الدِّينِ. So that tells you that everyone is going to have in-depth knowledge of deen. So becoming someone who have in-depth knowledge of Quran and Hadith is farz kifaya, is not farz ayn, is not farz upon each and every human being. To become a doctor is not farz upon everyone. To become a lawyer is not compulsory upon every Muslim. So what is compulsory? Right? So this is something that we need to understand, because sometimes it so happens that a person might have a PhD in a science, humanities or whatever, literature. He's got a PhD in literature, but he doesn't know how to make salah properly. So has he fulfilled the criteria of talabul ilmi faridatun ala kulli muslim? The acquiring of knowledge is compulsory upon every Muslim. I got a PhD, I must have completed, I must have fulfilled. If Allah said knowledge is compulsory, I got a PhD. So not necessarily so. What is faraz? Faraz is that For every faraz in Islam, for every compulsion in Islam, for everything that is obligatory upon us in Islam comes a commensurate responsibility and a commensurate obligation to know about that obligation. So if, for example, salat is faraz, is compulsory upon each and every person to know how to perform salah. That is compulsory. You're going for Hajj, it's compulsory for you to know the basic manner of how to perform Hajj. If there is any complication that comes about because of the situation that you find yourself in Makkah and Mina and Muzdalifah, and it is beyond the norm, then you can find out, but the basic you are supposed to know. You are getting married is compulsory. Marriage is it's compulsory for you to know what is required from you as a husband or as a wife in marriage. You're opening up a business, you're opening up a practice, a law practice, a medical practice. It's compulsory for you to know the basics with regard to what is halal and what is haram. So that is compulsory. Having said that, the one portion that many times people say now there's this dichotomy that we have, these are Dini knowledge students, these are students who come from Darul Uloom, we are university students. Now the community looks upon students from Darul Uloom these are like the pious people, these are the people who are sort of doing Quran and Hadith, they are the favored people of the community. We are, university, they look upon us like in a certain manner. They say now these people are, modern people, modern Muslims. Now, what is the situation? Now, firstly, there is no dichotomy in Islam between Deen and Dunya. This whole particular aspect we need to understand. There is no dichotomy. Therefore, Nabi Karim Sallallahu said, "Talabul halali faridatun." To acquire halal rizq is not something that is something to do with dunya. It's not something to do with the world. To acquire halal rizq, Nabi Karim Sallallahu said, faridatun. It is a religious obligation. Now, we don't look upon this whole aspect of this is deen, this is dunya. Like the way Mike Twain said that east is east and west is west, the twain shall never meet. We don't have this, that listen, this is dunya, so dunya we must have nothing to do with deen, and deen has got nothing to do with dunya, deen has got nothing to do with dunya, or dunya doesn't have anything to do with deen. We don't believe in that. We believe every aspect of our life is governed by Allah Ta'ala's commands. So even the education that we are acquiring in this university is supposed to be governed by deen. It's supposed to be governed by Allah Ta'ala's commands. And we have to do it within the framework of Allah Ta'ala's commands. And if you do it within the framework of Allah Ta'ala's commands, it becomes not only praiseworthy, it becomes even rewarding. Sometimes it can become you fulfilling a collective obligation. Whenever I speak about knowledge, I made mention of this, that Imam Ghazali Rahmatullah Alayhi had said that any branch of knowledge which is indispensable for the welfare of mankind, it's for as a kifaya for the ummah to acquire it. So if the ummah doesn't have people who are doctors, doesn't have people who are accountants, we are going to be prejudiced. The ummah is going to be in a disadvantageous society. Today, alhamdulillah, we can take pride. Or we can say that if there is a need of any Muslim in any medical field, by and large, you will get people within the community that will be able to look, or he can turn towards. So this is something. So we don't look upon it as something that is haram, or it is something that is blameworthy. No, far from it. I would like you to, if you get a chance, go onto the Google, and of course people now, I know people all share Googles now. Everyone is a share Google. Go and see a transcript of a talk that Mufti Taqi Usmani gave recently, where he said that when his father, who was a Grand Mufti, came to Pakistan after the formation of Pakistan, they asked him that how should we have the educational system in Pakistan. So he said, do what was done in the Qayrawan University. Now people are Muslim students, so I hope people know where Qayrawan University is. You know where Qayrawan University is? Anyone venturing an answer? There are two major universities. One is Zaytuna and one is Qayrawan.
Morocco.
Yeah, the Qayrawan University is in Fars, right? Fez or Fars, whichever you want to call it. And it was founded, and the initial capital outlay for the university was given by a Muslim woman. Right? So in that particular university, Mufti Taqi Sahib says, you had within one, call it campus, one university, people who was teaching different disciplines under one roof. So you had Ibn Arabi teaching fiqh, and Ibn Arabi has become very famous. Why has he become famous? Everyone knows him from Ertugrul. And ulama were talking about him, no one used to talk about him. Now everyone talks about him because of Ibn Arabi of Ertugrul fame. Then you had Qazi Ayaz Rahmatullah alayhi teaching history and seerah, Islamic discipline. You had Ibn Rushd, Averroes, teaching poet philosophy. You had Ibn Khaldun teaching history, sociology. And all of them was done under one roof, under one institute. So we didn't have the situation of dichotomy. We had a situation where this was an ideal situation where everything was taught under an Islamic guise. So this, therefore, for you, whatever you are doing, don't ever look upon it as something that you are doing as haram. Do it correctly, it becomes rewarding, it becomes permissible, and it becomes a means of reward provided you do it correctly. That's one thing. Let's understand that. So go in here with confidence in what you are learning. The second aspect, which I think is very important, is sometimes it's always good for us to understand the purpose of knowledge. Right? I related to you when I said Iqra. Many times people relate the first portion of the ayat, Iqra. But we don't see the next portion. Iqra bi ismi rabbik. Read in the name of Allah. Knowledge, Iqra bi ismi rabbik. Knowledge must take you to Allah. If knowledge doesn't take you to Allah, then you have to question the knowledge. If someone is a PhD in engineering and he has a doubt in the existence of Allah, will you call him a knowledgeable person? What will you call him? You call him an informed illiterate. He's informed in his stuff, but as far as we are concerned, is someone who has a doubt with regard to the one who created the universe. How can he be, in a true sense of the word, knowledgeable? So we have to understand that after what is knowledge, there's a purpose towards knowledge. For us, knowledge is just not something that you acquire to get a degree or to become a profession where you can earn money. That's not what knowledge is. There's a purpose towards knowledge. Allah in the Quran has put it this way, إِنَّمَا يَخْشَى اللَّهَ مِنْ عِبَادِهِ الْعُلَمَاءِ. The ulama and the learned are those who fear Allah. Now, so whatever you are doing, it leads you towards something. It leads you towards a purpose. The purpose is to become a better human being. It becomes closer towards Almighty Allah. It's a means towards an objective. Therefore, in one hadith, Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam said, "Man talaba al-ilm liyujari bihi al-ulama wa liyumari bihi as-sufaha." If anyone acquires knowledge to debate with ulama and learned people, I can overcome you in debate, or to impress his knowledge upon the people who are sort of ignorant, then Allah will turn his face away from Jannah, and Allah will turn Jannah away from him. You didn't acquire knowledge to show how knowledgeable you are. So there is a purpose towards knowledge. And one of the things that I think is very important, we don't gain knowledge to earn money. Now, that doesn't mean to earn money is haram. We don't say that to earn is haram, neither do we say in any way that if anyone wants to earn wealth, is nothing wrong with it. It just depends how you earn it and how you utilize it, right? Out of the 5 questions Allah will question us on the day of Qiyamah, about which Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam said, 5 questions Allah will put forward to you on the day of judgment. How Allah Ta'ala is so merciful. Here in university, the teachers will never give you the questions before you start an examination. If you come to know all the questions before the examination, there's a big problem then. Either the teachers are in problem or you are in problem. Here Allah Ta'ala is telling you the questions. I'm going to ask you these 5 questions. 2 of the questions pertaining to what Allah will ask us on the day of judgment will be about how you earn your wealth and how you spend your wealth. So there's nothing wrong in earning your wealth, but knowledge is far more superior for us to accumulate it or to pursue it solely for the sake of money. Nabi Karim Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam used to make dua, Allahumma la tajali dunya akbara hammina wa la mablagha ilmina. Allah, do not make this material world the reason why I gain knowledge. If your profession becomes the means for you to earn, there's nothing wrong with it. But you don't become a doctor or someone because I want to earn money. Allah will give you money, Allah will give you wealth according to His predetermined quota, which He gives. Ma min dabbatin fil ardi illa ala Allahi rizquha. There is no living being and living creature upon whom is the responsibility of providing for him is the responsibility upon Allah Ta'ala. So that Allah will give. So that is one of the things. And also, I think it's important for us to understand, if we don't have this objective, what happens then? Without this objective, then we will have a situation where we find many a times, many of the problems that we have in the Muslim Ummah today, we might make mention of it, is the result that we don't pursue the proper objective of knowledge. Why is materialism so rampant in our community? Well, because that is where our knowledge has placed it. Why is Islam such an inconsequential part of our life? Because that is where the knowledge and the educational system places it. So these are the type of things that we have to, we have a purpose, we have an objective with regard to knowledge. It's not only becoming and taking a degree, becoming an honest student, gaining honors. That's not the purpose. The purpose is to become a better human being, is to come closer towards Almighty Allah. For example, why do you find that many a times the rulers of the Muslim world, many of whom today have betrayed the people and have sold themselves out to foreign interest, they are not only knowledgeable, they are very knowledgeable from the worldly sense of view. Most of them have got PhDs, they are university graduates. Many of the journalists today who sensationalize things and deceive people, they are not only knowledgeable, they are very knowledgeable. But the reason why we have this situation in the world today with regard to many people acquiring knowledge perhaps more than what was previously, but we don't see the consequences or the betterment of society because of that knowledge, is because we have acquired knowledge without the objective, and the objective is to become a better human being. And of course, thereafter there's a certain degree, and I will conclude with this, and then if there's anyone who wants to ask any questions, maybe any discussion, there's a certain degree of pride in submitting to Allah Ta'ala, to submitting to the commands of Allah Ta'ala. You know, many times we feel that we are independent, free thinkers, and we can think whatever we want, or we must have the right to formulate our own opinion, you know. So there's a certain degree of pride that we have, that no, we submit to the command of Allah Ta'ala. Once you say that Quran and Hadith, the knowledge of Allah Ta'ala, is the most superior form of knowledge, not that the other form of knowledge is haram, but that means that we are regarding it to be superior, so we submit to it. There's a certain degree of pride in submission. You cannot be a believer until you subject your desires, your thoughts, your views, your actions within the framework that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has provided. And there's a certain pride in submitting to Allah Ta'ala's commands, without us taking that, no, we are, sometimes, you know, you need a diplomat to tell you certain things. So in a diplomat might, instead of telling you that you got a hole in your mind, you got a hole in your brain, he will tell you are very open-minded. So sometimes you have to be careful with regard to what it is. Nabi Karim Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam was the greatest human being, and we regard him to be the greatest human being, right? Greater than all of us. But when Allah Ta'ala related about him in terms of his greatest achievement, in terms of spiritually coming in front of Allah Ta'ala, Allah Ta'ala said, Subhanalladhi asra bi'abdi. Glory be to the one who asra bi'abdi, who took his servant. That great human being who is greater than all of us, referred to at the peak of his spiritual accolade, so to speak, is referred to as a servant. Allah doesn't say, Subhanalladhi asra, Nabiyyam, or, Allah Ta'ala, praise be to Allah who took his Rasul, who took his messenger, who took Shahid, wa Mubashira, wa Nadira. Allah Ta'ala said, bi'abdihi, his. And there is a certain degree of, there is humility in knowledge, and there is arrogance in ignorance. Really, if someone is arrogant with regard to his knowledge, and perhaps you have to ask, does he have the real knowledge or not? Imam Malik Rahmatullah alayhi, one of the greatest scholars in our history, someone came from North Africa to Medina, right, and came to him in Medina Munawwara, and came to ask him and said, my village has got a particular complex issue, and they've asked me to come to Medina, travel to Medina to come and ask you about the matter. He related the whole matter. Imam Malik thought, and he said, I don't know the answer. So he said, what am I going to tell people? What am I going to tell my village who sent me to ask you regarding you to be one of the greatest scholars of the Islamic world, what are you going to tell them? Tell them, I don't know the answer. So this particular aspect, that when we do come and gain knowledge, we do it with a certain degree of servitude, with humility. And there is humility in knowledge. There isn't a situation of having pride in knowledge. Maybe I'll conclude with this example. If you see a fruit tree, right? And any fruit tree that has got fruit, you will find that particular fruit tree, the branches are sort of bent towards the earth. So when it's bent towards the earth, it's a sign that it's a fruit tree full of fruit. And any particular fruit tree that has got no fruit, where are the branches headed towards? Upwards, gone up towards the sky. But that particular branches that are going up to the sky, that means you've got nothing, no fruit. And that's a reality with regard to human being. Anyone who's got knowledge, there will be a degree of humility in him. And anyone who doesn't have, he will be like that particular fruit tree that has got no fruit. You think that I'm the greatest, I'm the highest, but there is nothing in it. So these are some of the things that you have to keep in mind. I don't like to go into telling people about the aspect, because it's a cliche that has been many times used. Ground yourself, keep yourself steadfast, retain your Muslim identity. There is no doubt with regard to it. And one of the ways of retaining our Islamic identity in an environment like this is, Allah in the Quran says, إِنَّمَا يَعْمُرُ مَسَاجِدَ اللَّهِ. The hadith makes mention that when you see a person attached to a masjid, then bear testimony to his iman. Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam said, whenever you see a person attached to the masjid, then bear testimony to his iman. Then he read this ayat, إِنَّمَا يَعْمُرُ مَسَاجِدَ اللَّهِ مَنْ آمَنَ بِاللَّهِ وَالْيَوْمِ الْآخِرِ. Only those will tend and will populate and will be close to the masjid who believe in Allah. So this particular masjid for you people as MSA students is a means of Islamic identity and a means of keep close to it. Come here whenever you get a free break. I don't know what they say. They say I must tell people, instead of playing tani, you would rather come here. Come to the masjid and read 2 rakats namaz. I don't know what that thing ever means. I just heard people talking about it. So inshallah, these are few things that we can talk about. And if there is anything, any particular questions on this, we can talk about it. Muslims, they have always been in the forefront of all disciplines. There's one wonderful books written on this Western civilization, Islam and Muslims. It's a Muslim scholars who gave rise to the European Renaissance. Go today to Spain, you just see a small example of what Muslim contribution was in every field. Right? There's such great examples. Ibn Nafis was the first person who recorded the pulmonary blood circulation. And this was attributed to William Harvey 300 years after Ibn Nafis. I gave a talk about this, I think it was somewhere in the north of UK. And one doctor came to me and said, Moulana, I heard this in one of your talks, and in a medical journal, this was made mention that William Harvey was the one who introduced the pulmonary blood circulation to the world. And he said, I wrote to the journal that is not correct. And I did some research to show that Ibn Nafis, and he said in the next journal they corrected it. That Ibn Nafis was the one who first, circulated and told people about pulmonary blood circulation. Ibn Haytham was the one who introduced the aspect of optics and the cataract operation. He is the one he first wrote about the Milky Way galaxy long before people came to know about it. And there are enough examples with regard to it, what Khwarizmi done in terms of algebra and all those type of things. I won't bore you with all those type of details, but of course you can read and you should be aware with regard to it. So you can. So I will conclude. These are just some introductory remarks, and I don't know if anyone wants to talk about anything. There is going to be a session where there will be question and answers. I'm going to take leave because I'm going to go 1 or 2 places. But if you people are on this, if there is anything, questions, any discussion, please be free to do so, inshallah. And don't be shy. The only question that is not appropriate is the one that has not been asked.
Moulana, Jazakallah for your input. I think there's an important comment that needs to be made about the fact that knowledge is not necessarily neutral, right? And I think we need to be aware, particularly as university students and as individuals who are working with knowledge on a regular basis, that the construction of knowledge and the development of knowledge is not isolated from power, right? And so, as important as it is to seek knowledge, it's also important to be aware of how did power function to create that knowledge, right? And how have these power dynamics come into existence? Right? So, I mean, you mentioned, for example, the great scholars from Spain, and it will be touched on a little bit later. But as students, particularly in a context of when you talk about decolonization and when we think about this decolonial movement, we also need to recognize that how is it possible? Why is it that these scholars ended up getting a back seat, right? And why is it that some scholars were given more prominence than others? When we think about our own context, when we think about our madrasas, when we think about our universities, we have to be trying to constantly be thinking about like who has the power to determine what knowledge we study, right? And what knowledge ends up being part of our curriculum and our syllabus, right? And who benefits from our studying this knowledge. I think it's just important for us to be aware of that dynamic, so that we can think a little bit more critically about the knowledge that we are working with, and be motivated to then seek knowledge that will challenge those power dynamics if we find that power is unjust, if we find that power is working towards perpetuating oppression in our society. So,
anyone else? Any other questions? Any comments?
Moulana mentioned Imam Ghazali Rahmatullah saying that certain science is needed in the community. It escalates to the level of Fard al-Kifaya. On that note, Moulana Khalid Saifur Rahmani, a leading scholar from India, was recently in South Africa, and he said the Muslims of India are fighting three major legal battles. The first is the Babri Masjid, the second is the Muslim Citizenship Bill, and the third is related to marriage, right? They're fighting three legal cases on a national scale that are major cases. And the lawyer for all three of these cases, respectively, three different lawyers for all three cases, are all three Hindu lawyers. For such a vital case affecting the Muslim community, the Muslim community of India weren't able to produce three competent lawyers to fight those cases. So for all three cases, Hindu lawyers are fighting those cases.
All right, now the one point, this is very interesting. Sometimes the concept of a knowledge is definitely neutral, but the bias that comes in is not. And of course, and if anyone wants to read a book on this, which is really worthwhile of reading because he has elaborated on it quite a bit, although there are certain aspects that we don't agree with. But Muhammad Asad, Islam at the Crossroads, he wrote a book that time about this whole particular aspect, how there has been bias that has been created within. Now, this has been something that has been very well, Pompidou has made mention with regard to that time the French president had said there are various ways of neutralizing the countries that we have colonized. Right? There are various ways of neutralizing the leaders in the countries that we have colonized. And one of them, he said, is education. Akbar al-Habadi, the very famous poet, philosopher, and he was once upon a time the rector of the Aligarh University. Now, Aligarh University has come into quite a bit of news headlines because of the students there and in JNU, the Jawaharlal Nehru University in Delhi, who have been in the forefront of the protests against the CAA. And maybe in solidarity with the students there, maybe something that you could look at in terms of the students have been the people, and that's why university students throughout many parts of the world have stand up in solidarity with them. Professor Akbar al-Abadi had said a very amazing thing. He said, Fir'aun, the Pharaoh, would not have achieved notoriety of infanticide, of killing small children, if the idea of setting up a college would have come to his mind. It means, we all know that Allah Ta'ala says in the Quran, يُقَتِّلُونَ أَبْنَاءَكُمْ وَيَسْتَحْيُونَ نِسَاءَكُمْ, that Fir'aun, when he came to know that there is going to be, according to the dream that he had seen, a threat to his power and his throne from the male of Bani Israel, from a person from Bani Israel. So he said, kill all the small children of Bani Israel. All the male children, kill them. So what did Akbar al-Abadi, the poet, said? That why did he have to kill children? If he would have set up a college to brainwash the people, there would not have been a threat to his power. What a deep-seated type of poem. So it's something that what you have said is very true. That sometimes the concepts are neutral, but the what comes in, and of course today it's as clear as daylight. Some of the concepts that are taught under the broad guise of knowledge.
If I can perhaps add to what I was saying.
Yeah.
I think. Can Moulana please announce that if sisters have any questions?
Yeah, all right, yeah, sure. Oh, you got a WhatsApp number?
My number. No, let me approach it. So 082.
All right.
Moulana's number.
You can try. You can WhatsApp on 083-786-2859. Oh, your number? 083. Mine is quite easy. 083-786. So that everyone will know. 2859. So just have to add 2859.
For the sisters.
For the sisters.
Sorry, Asif.
Yeah, so I was just saying that to take it one step further and to be a little bit more explicit when we're talking about power dynamics, particularly within the Muslim community in South Africa, we need to be clear about, as Indian male Muslims, we need to be aware of how much power we actually have in our society, right? To determine the knowledge that is taught, to determine, the sort of ideas that are put forward in our society, to think about, how our position as Indian male Muslims allows us certain opportunities and privileges that are often denied to other people within the community, within our society. And once we become aware of that, once we start to name that power positionality clearly, then we can start to dismantle any unjust products of that positionality. And we can start to think a little bit more critically about who we are in relation to others within our society, in relation to our institutions, in relation to our peers, right? So, what does it mean to be an Indian male Muslim in a context where black people are being discriminated against at almost every level of our society, where women are still being denied access to, opportunities, right? And so we need to be just aware of that, and we can start to become a little bit more forceful in many ways in addressing those challenges.
Forceful can mean two things. One is you can force in terms of doing things the way things are. Sometimes you can use your force to be a purveyor of good, and there are many opportunities that we can do that. Just so. Any other questions? Any?
It's I think it's almost inevitable that once you come into this, once we enter university and you come into this environment, the external factors do start affecting us. No matter how steadfast you might think we are, or how religious you might think we are, just the fact that we are constantly surrounded by all of that does affect us. However slightly, it does affect us, and it's very easy to lose your way slowly. Maybe in the library one day and you delay a salah, you miss the salah, and as it goes like that. And even though you know that it's not the right thing to do, sometimes it becomes very difficult to take yourself out of a situation where you're doing something that's not entirely right and put yourself into something that's more right. Moulana, how would you advise us, myself first, how do you make that change? Because you do know that now it's salah time and there's a Dhuhr Jama'ah is in the masjid at 1:30. But on the day when you're having lunch with your friends at 1:30, how do you conscientize yourself and push yourself towards to doing the thing that's right?
Well, I think firstly, two things in this particular regard. Normally, when people tell me that environment is not conducive and it's not there, and there's sometimes difficulty, it doesn't motivate or encourage you towards things that Islam has sanctioned or encouraged, or it motivates you towards these things which are prohibited. I always, maybe it might be simplistic, but I said, is the environment to practice upon deen in today's time more difficult than it was for the Sahaba when they started accepting Islam? I mean, for them just to say the kalima la ilaha illallah Muhammadur Rasulullah was equivalent to putting your life in danger, right? And they went through it. Now, for us to perform salah, to say the kalima, because of whatever reasons in the constitutions, there's no barrier towards doing it. And sometimes I think that do you realize how the force was for you not to practice upon deen? Just imagine it by this one incident. Abu Talib is on his deathbed, the uncle of Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, matured adult, right? And Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam is telling him, oh my uncle, just say once the kalima la ilaha illallah Muhammadur Rasulullah, something that he had during the course of his life told Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, oh my nephew, I know what you are preaching is right? And here Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam is telling, just tell one time, say it in my ear. I will bear testimony on the day of Qiyamah. My uncle said the kalima in my ear. He said la ilaha illallah. Right? And as he's thinking, Abu Jahl is telling him that, oh Abu Talib, for the fear of your nephew's Jahannam, are you going to leave the religion of your forefathers? For the fear of your nephew's hell, are you going to leave the religion of your forefathers? And he doesn't say the kalima. Now that was how the pressure was. What pressure you're talking of to comply? Now that was the type of pressure that was upon someone who was not young, someone who was so matured and adult. That's the type of pressure that was. He didn't say the kalima. Right? So first of all, that's one thing. There's one way of looking at it. Sahaba were something who had that. And then sometimes it's in these type of situations of challenge where the reward becomes even more greater. Right? So the person who has these challenges and then he comes through that, his reward is so much. Look at the Quran, which talks about those people who are in the battlefield and everyone flees and he remains steadfast. What is his reward? And the third thing is, that's one of the reasons why there is this, we are human beings. We are going to get caught up in certain situations which are less than ideal. Right? That is a reality. That is why Nabi Karim Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam and Allah Subhanahu Wa Ta'ala told us, Inna al-hasanati yudhibna sayyat. The next time you do it, go and do a good deed, it will wipe away the other deed. A person came to Nabi Karim Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam and told him something that was very serious in terms of the guna that he had committed. Right? He committed a sin. Nabi Karim Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam heard it and said, go and perform salat, go and do something good. The good will wipe away the evil that you had done. So Allah Ta'ala never leaves us without hope and never leaves us in despondency. There are situations, never mind in the university, as people who are on the ground, sometimes you get into situations like that. Inshallah. All right, Jazakumullah. A question from the ladies section. How can we as Muslim students give da'wah towards deen at university without seeming pushy? I think it's interesting, very, very interesting, because firstly, we are living in a time where there is so much of misconceptions about Islam, and you come to know about it from time to time. I've been on many radio stations. I've been on 702 several times, although nowadays is no more the vibrant community radio station that it was when everyone was listening. So we used to come that time, and they used to call upon us, and sometimes they used to ask us many questions. So I said once I remember a question they were asked. They said, in the Quran it is said that you must kill every disbeliever. So I said, in the Quran it is said, فَوَيْلٌ لِلْمُصَلِّينَ, curse be upon the people who perform prayers. So I said, well, what does it mean? They say the verse in the Holy Quran which says kill disbelievers. I say there's a verse in the Quran that says you mustn't read salat. Right? Only that verse if you take it. فَوَيْلٌ لِلْمُصَلِّينَ, curse be upon the people who read salat. You have to take it into a context. What does the next ayat say? الَّذِينَ هُمْ عَنْ صَلَاتِهِمْ سَاهُونَ, those who are lazy in performing their prayers. So the verse itself says, فَوَيْلٌ لِلْمُصَلِّينَ, curse be upon the people who perform salat. Now if you take it out of context without reading the next verse, you're going to come into a very these are the type of things. And I think what is needed is never ever be pushy, because people by and large don't like pushiness. And Allah Ta'ala in the Holy Quran says, La ikraha fi din, there is no compulsion in religion. But where there is a need for us to make mention with regard to the beauty of our deen, what does Islam say about this? What does Islam say about this? When there is any type, then put forward the beauty and just be positive with regard to it. Like sometimes there's such beautiful concepts, the way the Quran has made mention, without getting into an argument about the divinity of Isa alayhi salatu wasalam. I mean, sometimes I just feel that this one small portion of a verse is so great in terms of understanding the human nature of Isa alayhi salatu wasalam, and taking him away from divinity. Kana ya'kulani ta'am. Isa alayhi salatu wasalam, you say he is divine, but he used to eat food. Subhanallah. Kana ya'kulani ta'am. He used to eat food. How can someone who is dependent upon food be divine? Just one. So whenever we get a chance, this is what we believe in. And the Quran tells us that Isa alayhi salatu wasalam used to be dependent upon food for his survival. How can someone who is dependent upon food for survival be divine? So whenever we get that opportunity, let us put it forward, but do it in a best possible way. Jazakumullah.